In February of 1957, the dead body of a young boy was found in the woods of the Fox Chase neighborhood in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The boy was found naked in a box that previously held a baby bassinet. The child was first discovered by a young man that was checking his muskrat traps. Knowing that his traps were illegal, he decided against reporting the body. Days later, a college student found the body after seeing a rabbit go into the trap-infested underbrush. The student reported his findings and sparked the beginning of the investigation. The body was wrinkled, as if it had been submerged in water prior to being killed. There was also a dark substance, presumed to be vomit, found in the boy's throat. The main cause of death, however, were multiple strikes to the back of the head. Despite all that was known, the boy didn't have an identity. The case was covered heavily by the media. The Philadelphia Inquirer printed over 400,000 flyers with the boy's likeness on it, asking anyone with information to come forward. Despite the attempts, no one came forward. All the clues on the crime scene led to a dead end, and all hope was lost. The boy was originally buried in Potter's Field, but in 1998, the body was exhumed to extract DNA. The boy was reburied after a donation of a coffin, headstone, and funeral service. There was a significant attendance to the funeral, the headstone reading, "America's Unknown Child." Between the evening of June 9th and the early morning of June 10th, 1912, a Villisca, Iowa home was the scene of a horrific crime. The entire Moore family, the occupants of the household, and 2 guests were found bludgeoned with an axe. All 8 victims, 6 of which were children, were found with severe head wounds from the axe. On the night of June 9th, the Moore family and guests arrived at the house at about 10 p.m. from a Children's Day program. At 7 a.m. the next day, the Moore's neighbor checked on the family, noticing that no one came outside to do their normal morning chores. After making her way into the house, she found all the occupants dead. Doctors believe that the murders took place between midnight and 5 a.m. In the Moore's home, 2 cigarettes were found in the attic, suggesting that the killer or even killers waited patiently for everyone in the house to fall asleep. Investigators believe that all of the victims were asleep during their attacks, except one. One of the guests was believed to have fought back against her attackers because of the way that she was found on her bed. Several suspects came to mind, one of which made it through 2 trials before finally being acquitted. The crime remains unsolved and has become known as the Villisca Axe Murders. Continuing the theme of axe murders, during the span of over a year, an axe-wielding serial killer terrorized the city of New Orleans. From May of 1918 until October of 1919, 12 people were attacked, 7 of whom died. In almost all of these cases, a small hole would be found in a door, one just big enough for the killer to fit through. This fact alone ruled out several suspects because of their size. The killer's victims had many similarities, most of which were women, and the men that were killed were never seen as the targets. Many were also of Italian descent. It was also rare for the victims to have been robbed. There was finally a lull in the attacks that started in August of 1918. This obviously gave the people of New Orleans a false sense of security and a shock in March of 1919, when the next attack took place. This attack was on the Cortemegula family. The couple, along with their 2-year-old daughter, were attacked in their home. The only survivor was Rosie Cortemegula, who was found cradling her dead daughter in her arms. Days after this attack, a letter arrived at local newspapers with a demand to be published. The letter's address line was from hell. The attacks of this nature finally seemed to cease in October of 1919. However, no one was caught for these crimes. In 1897, a Nashville home was found up in flames. This was the Aid household. Their neighbor scoured the home, searching for any survivors, sifting through the wreckage, calling their names, until he found their bodies within the rubble. Originally thought to have been an accident, investigators found that the youngest child, Rosa, wasn't burned like the others. She was also missing a large part of her head and her hand. With this, it was obvious that the fire was just a cover-up. Investigators eventually determined that the family was forced into the parlor and killed. Rosa was the only person that escaped. However, she was caught, murdered, and thrown back into the fire with the rest of her family. All footprints and possible evidence was washed away following the heavy rains of that night. Following the night, the case went cold and was never solved. The Oakland County child killer, or killers, were responsible for the deaths of 4 children. The killer terrorized Oakland County between February of 1976 and March of 1977. The children were held from days to even weeks, sexually tortured. Timothy King was the last confirmed victim. During the time that he was missing, Timothy's mother stated that she wanted him to come home soon so that he could have his favorite food, some KFC. When Timothy was finally found, an autopsy found that his last meal was fried chicken. Many suspects were considered, including known pedophiles. One of the investigators' strongest suspects, Chris Bush, committed suicide in 1978. Following his suicide, no similar murders happened again. Despite this, the case is still considered to be unsolved.